Hi, fifth grade. So if you're watching this video, you want to review step 2 of our project, which was taking notes on the Dakota people. And this was the day, it was November 18th. That was the lesson if you want to go back and watch it more in depth on the social studies classroom page. But I'm just going to quickly go through our notes for that day. And so our learning targets for that day was 1, I can take notes in my notebook about the Dakota tribe, and 2, I can explain what a resource is and where the Dakota lived. So in order to get that information, we went to our epic reading book, which looks like this. This is the first page. It's the Sioux, Native American Sioux tribe on epic. And so we had our notebooks at the ready, and we had written down already, we learned in ELA the day before, that a resource is a thing that helps you live. So water, food, clothes, and materials are all examples of resources. And so I wrote that down at the top in my notes, and then I did a line down the center. And on one side of my page, I had Sioux resources. So as I went through the book, I was going to write the bullet points underneath of the resources that they had. And on the other side, I wrote where they lived. So those are the 2 things you should have to guide your notes for this day. So as we read, we see hundreds of years ago, North America was mostly wild, open land. Native Americans lived on the land. They had their own languages and customs. The Sioux are one Native American nation. They are known for their brave fighters and strong leaders. Let's learn more about these Native Americans. And so we know, right, from class that even though they're called the Sioux in this book, that was the name that other tribes called them and Europeans called them, but they go by Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota are the names of those tribes. Sioux Territory. The Sioux Nation lived in parts of present-day Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Some people also lived in Canada. The Sioux lived on the plains. The people hunted and farmed on the grassy land. They used water from nearby lakes and rivers. So in my notes, I should have all of these places listed. So what I wrote at the top is Midwest. That's the region of the U.S. which we studied. So those states include Minnesota, you should have this written down in your notes, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, and then Canada at the bottom. So that's their territory. You could also write the plains for describing the land they lived on. We also see a resource here. Before I forget, our resource, it tells us they used water from nearby lakes and rivers. So on our resources side of our notes, the first thing we're going to have written down is water from lakes and rivers. Home life. Most Sioux lived in homes called teepees. These were easy to set up and move. Teepees were made of strong wooden poles and buffalo skins. Here's another resource, wooden poles and buffalo. Right? They used both of those things to build their houses. So you can write buffalo listed here. You could also write wooden poles. The women skinned buffalo and prepared the skin to cover their homes. The Sioux built a small fire in the center of each teepee. People used it to cook and keep warm. Smoke escaped through a hole in the top. When it rained or snowed, the people closed the hole with a piece of buffalo skin. What they ate. So get ready to write. There's a lot of resources on this page. The Sioux were mainly hunters and gatherers. They were nomads, so they moved around in search of food. They hunted animals such as deer and buffalo. They caught fish. Okay, so our new resource an animal that we have not talked about yet is deer. So you're going to write down deer for a resource, and then also write down fish because they ate fish that they caught from rivers. The Sioux gathered fruits, vegetables, and grains from the land. So right now I'm going to write down fruits, vegetables, and grains. Hopefully you can see that. These included berries and wild rice. Sometimes tribes traded with each other for food. So if you need more time when you're watching the video, just pause me right now and you can write all of these words down. The American bison or buffalo was an important food source for the Sioux. Boys learned to hunt at a young age. Often they would ride horses and carry bows and arrows. So another resource I see, horses, right? They used the horses to help them catch animals, and bows and arrows. So it's not necessarily just things you eat that are resources. Buffalo had many uses. The tribe used the skins for clothing and shelter. The meat was a key source of food. When the hunters came home, the women would turn the meat into jerky. First they cut it into strips, then they dried it. So we already wrote down buffalo, so we're good on this page. All right, so that's all we got to for resources and territory. I'm not going to read the rest of the book, but if you would like to look up more information, just read this book again on Epic. And so once you have copied these notes onto your notebook page, then you can go to your report in ELA. At the top of the page, there is your Indigenous Peoples of America report, and you can copy this information from your notebook to your slides, and then you're good to go on the Sioux.